Good morning, Year 6, and welcome to your second reading session of the week. Today we're going to finish chapter 5, and then you're going to have some comprehension questions to answer on the chapter. So make sure you're listening in and reading along with me. Bilbo pricked up his ears. He was at last beginning to guess himself. He hurried a little, getting as close as he dared behind Gollum, who was still going quickly, not looking back, but turning his head from side to side, as Bilbo could see from the faint glimmer on the walls.
My birthday present! Curse it! How did we lose it, my precious? Yes, that's it! When we came this way last, when we twisted that nasty young squeaker. That's it! Curse it! It slipped from us after all these ages and ages. It's gone! Gollum!
Suddenly Gollum sat down and began to weep, a whistling and a gurgling sound horrible to listen to. Bilbo halted and flattened himself against the tunnel wall. After a while Gollum stopped weeping and began to talk. He seemed to be having an argument with himself.
It's no good going back there to search, no. We don't remember all the places we've visited, and it's no use. The Baggins has got it in its pockets. The nasty noser has found it, we says. We guesses, precious, only guesses. We can't know till we find the nasty creature and squeezes it. But it doesn't know what the present can do, does it? It'll just keep it in its pockets. Doesn't know, and it can't go far. It's lost itself, the nasty nosy thing. Doesn't know the way out, it said so. Oh, it said yes, but it's tricksy. It doesn't say what it means. It won't say what it's got in its pockets is. It knows. It knows the way in. It must know a way out. Yes! It's off to the back door. To the back door, that's it. The goblins will catch it. It can't get out that way, precious. Well, goblins is. Yes, but if it's got the present, our precious present, then goblins will get it, Gollum. They'll find it. They'll find out what it does. We shan't ever be safe again. Never, Gollum. One of the goblins will put it on, and then no one will see him. He'll be there, but not seen. Not even our clever eyes will notice him. And he'll come creepsy and tricksy and catch us. Gollum, Gollum. Then let's stop talking, precious, and make haste. Since the Baggins has gone that way, we must go quick and see. Go, not far now. Make haste.
With a spring, Gollum got up and started shambling off at a great pace. Bilbo hurried after him, still cautiously, though his chief fear now was of tripping on another snag and falling with a noise. His head was in a whirl of hope and wonder. It seemed that the ring he had was a magic ring. It made you invisible. He had heard of such things, of course, in old tales, but it was hard to believe that he really had found one, by accident. Still, there it was. Gollum with his bright eyes had passed him by, only a yard to one side. On they went, Gollum flip-flapping ahead, hissing and cursing, Bilbo behind going as softly as a hobbit can. Soon they came to places where, as Bilbo had noticed on the way down, side passages opened, this way and that. Gollum began to count them.
One left, yes. One right, yes. Two right, yes, yes. Two left, yes, yes.
And so on and on. As the count grew, he slowed down, and he began to get shaky and weepy, for he was leaving the water further and further behind, and he was getting afraid. Goblins might be about, and he had lost his ring. At last he stopped by an opening, on their left as they went up.
7 right, yes. 6 left, yes,
he whispered.
This is it. This is the way to the back door, yes. Here's the passage.
He peered in and shrank back.
But we daren't go in, precious, so we doesn't. Goblins down there. Lots of goblinses. We smell them. We shall what we do. Curse them and crush them. We must wait here, precious. Wait a bit and see.
So they came to a dead stop. Gollum had brought Bilbo to the way out after all, but Bilbo could not get in. There was Gollum sitting humped right in the opening, and his eyes gleaming cold in his head as he swayed it from side to side between his knees. Bilbo crept away from the wall more quietly than a mouse, but Gollum stiffened at once and sniffed, and his eyes went green. He hissed softly but menacingly. He could not see the hobbit, but now he was on the alert, and he had other senses that the darkness had sharpened, hearing and smell. He seemed to be crouched right down with his flat hands splayed on the floor and his thread husked out, nose almost to the ground. There was only a black shadow in the gleam of his own eyes. Bilbo could see or feel that he was tense as a bowstring, gathering for a spring. Bilbo almost stopped breathing and went stiff at himself. He was desperate. He must get away, out of the horrible darkness, while he still had strength left. He must fight. He must stab the foul thing, put its eyes out, kill it. It meant to kill him. No, not a fair fight. He was invisible now. Gollum had no sword. Gollum had not actually threatened to kill him, or tried to yet, and he was miserable, alone, lost. A sudden understanding, a pity mixed with horror, welled up in Bilbo's heart. A glimpse of endless unmarked days without light or hope or betterment. Hard stone, cold fish, sneaking and whispering. All these thoughts passed in a flash of a second. He trembled, and then quite suddenly in another flash, as if lifted by new strength and resolve, he leaped. No great leap for a man, but a leap in the dark. Straight over Gollum's head he jumped, 7 feet forward and 3 in the air. Indeed, had he known it, he only just missed cracking his skull on a low arch of the passage. Gollum threw himself backwards and grabbed as the hobbit flew over him, but too late. His hands snapped on thin air, and Bilbo, falling fair on his sturdy feet, sped off down the new tunnel. He did not turn to see what Gollum was doing. There was a hissing and cursing almost at his heels at first. Then it stopped. All at once there came a blood-curdling shriek, filled with hatred and despair. Gollum was defeated. He dared go no further. He had lost his prey, and lost too the only thing he'd ever cared for, his precious. The cry brought Bilbo's heart to his mouth, but still he held on. Now faint as an echo, but menacing, the voice came behind.
Thief! Thief! Baggins! We hates it! We hates it! We hates it forever!
Then there was silence, but that too seemed menacing to Bilbo. If our goblins are so near that he smelt them, he thought, then I'll have heard his shrieking and cursing. Careful now, or this way will lead you to worse things. The passage was low and roughly made. It was not too difficult for the hobbit, even when, in spite of all care, he stubbed his poor toes again, several times on nastily staggered Jones in the floor. A bit low for goblins, at least for the big ones, thought Bilbo, not knowing that even the big ones, the orcs of the mountains, go along at great speed, stooping low with their heads almost out the ground. Soon the passage that had been sloping down began to go up again, and after a while it climbed steeply. That slowed Bilbo, but at last the slope stopped and the passage turned a corner and dipped down again, and there, at the bottom of a short incline, he saw, filtering round another corner, a glimpse of light. No red light, as of a fire or lantern, but a pale out-of-doors sort of light. Then Bilbo began to run. Scuttling as fast as his legs would carry him, he turned the last corner and came suddenly right into an open space, where the light, after all this time in the dark, seemed dazzlingly bright. Really it was only a leak of sunshine in through a doorway, whether a great door, a stone door, was left standing open. Bilbo blinked, and then suddenly he saw goblins. Goblins in full armour with drawn swords sitting just inside the door and watching it with wide eyes and watching the passage that led to it. They were aroused, alert, ready for anything. They saw him sooner than he saw them. Yes, they saw him. Whether it was an accident or a last trick of the ring before it took a new master, it was not on his finger. With yells of delight the goblins rushed upon him. A pang of fear and loss, like an echo of Gollum's misery, smote Bilbo, and forgetting even to draw his sword, he struck his hands in his pockets, and there was the ring still, in his left pocket, and it slipped on his finger. The goblins stopped short. They could not see him. He had vanished. They yelled twice as loud as before, but not so delightedly. "Where is it?" they cried. "Go back up the passage," some shouted. "This way," some yelled. "That way," others yelled. "Look out for the door," bellowed the captain. Whistles blew, armour clashed, swords rattled, goblins cursed and swore and ran hither and thither, falling over one another and getting very angry. There was a terrible outcry, to-do and disturbance. Bilbo was dreadfully frightened, but he had the last sense to understand what had happened, and to sneak behind a big barrel which held drink for the goblin guards, and so get out of the way and avoid being bumped into, trampled to death, or caught by feel. "I must get to the door, I must get to the door," he kept on saying to himself, but it was a long time before he ventured to try. Then it was like a horrible game of blind man's bluff. The place was full of goblins running about, and the poor little hobbit dodged this way and that, was knocked over by a goblin who could not make out what he had bumped into, scrambled away on all four, slipped between the legs of the captain just in time, got up and ran for the door. It was still ajar, but a goblin had pushed it nearly to. Bilbo struggled, but he could not move it. He tried to squeeze through the crack. He squeezed, and he stuck. It was awful. His buttons had got wedged, and the edge of the door and the doorpost. He could see outside the opened air. There were a few steps running down into a narrow valley between tall mountains. The sun came out from behind a cloud and shone bright on the outside of the door, but he could not get through. Suddenly, one of the goblins inside shouted, "There's a shadow by the door! Something's outside!" Bilbo's heart jumped into his mouth. He gave a terrific squirm. Buttons burst off in all directions. He was through, with a torn coat and waistcoat, leaping down the steps like a goat, while bewildered goblins were still picking up his nice brass buttons on the doorstep. Of course they soon came down after him, hooting and hallooing and hunting among the trees, but they don't like the sun. It makes their legs wobble and their heads giddy. They could not find Bilbo with the ring on, slipped in and out of the shadow of the trees, running quick and quiet, and keeping out of the sun. So soon they went back grumbling and cursing to guard the door. Bilbo had escaped. Okay, we're going to stop there now, and tomorrow we're going to read chapter 6, which is a really good chapter. But today you need to go away and you need to answer your comprehension questions. Good luck!